lot for us to unpack today, so I'm excited about it. But I can honestly say that I think that humanity has been stripped away from the Black person, and I don't think it's a present day issue. It's something that has stemmed from years and years and years of us living on stolen land. Because newsflash, if you didn't know, the white man does not own this
This
country.
ain't ours.
Does not belong to us. Like we live on colonized land, and I think we tend to, as people, use words like minority. And I was like taught the difference between like calling a group of people the minority, so like Black people, Latinos, or Latinx people, the minority when we've been minoritized. A lot of the way that we as a culture, as a society shape things has been from our historical framework, which really started from like concepts of law and order, which I don't know if you guys remember, but these three words, law and order, come to mind from Trump's presidency. And he's not the first person to talk about it, though. It comes from Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency, where he was he during his presidency, during his reign, he started to focus a lot more on focusing on policing than welfare. The things that I think about when I think about social change is policing. I can't think about law and order without thinking about police and what police mean to our society at large. And so I looked at the great world of Wikipedia. I looked at a lot of different definitions, but this definition stuck out to me the most. And their definition of police, it says the police are a constituted body of persons empowered by a state with the aim to enforce the law, to ensure the safety, health, and possessions of citizens, and to prevent crime and civil disorder. And so, I don't know. I guess my question to you, which I think this brings a lot of different things that'll come up in our discussion. What do you guys think about how our history basically has laid a foundation for our present reality when we think about policing and police brutality? To kind of open up that conversation.
The ordinance of policing, I just looked at NAACP.org, and they actually have an article talking about slave patrol. My ordinance of modern day policing. So basically, it explains slave patrols as the ordinance of modern day policing can be traced back to slave patrol. The earliest form of slave patrol was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with one mission: to establish a system of terror and squash slave uprisings with the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. Tactics included the use of excessive force to control and produce desired slave behavior. So I would say, going off that, saying that the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. How far away from that ideology then as compared to now? I guess that's the question I'm trying to answer.
We're not too far. You get what I'm saying? We're not too far, because even when you think about that, that just told us from the beginning of policing, they've never been on our side. You get what I'm saying?
They were built to be.
They were built to stop us or prevent us from moving up. Even when you're not doing anything wrong, you ride down the street, you get nervous just seeing the police, because you never know at any given moment, depending on how they feel it can go left. Yeah, and we could be the next.
Insert the hashtag.
Yes.
That, like, how can the people that we are supposed to call on to stop criminal activity are the ones colluding with that? Because I think it sets it up. Like, what is that? What is the point that we like get that sort of movement for progress into equality in policing? And that's looking at our training, even how we train our police officers through a social justice framework.
Yeah, like, and I actually had a conversation with Alexis probably like a week ago about like what she went through in regards to her training. It was a lot more physical than it was like competencies and things of this nature. It was like,
Wow.
So that kind of brings a point of like, okay, that's kind of weird, because she was saying like with like the physical training and like kind of the after effects, she was saying like whenever she's like sitting in classroom, she's like on high alert about like what's gonna go on, can't really like calm down.
Right.
And you can only assume that that's it for like other people who may think even less of us as like Black people and who are joining the service for the wrong reasons. So you can end up saying that like that makes them even more hyper vigilant about us. So I feel so like the next question is like, what is something that we can actually do about this particular system that's actually gonna improve the work? So like using having more service in regards to like, okay, you need to be more competent about this specific culture, or be more competent about like how you treat people in general.
Yeah,
Just general
stereotypes.
classes.
Yeah.
But see, this the thing with that, and it's the relationships between the cops and the community, because I think that's the biggest problem, right? Like we don't trust you, and like you said, how when you get to a point where you can't trust the people who are supposed to keep you safe, like where are you? Who do you turn to?
Going off your point too, like especially like when you actually experience those traumatic situations with the police officer, or you have friends that experience those traumatic situations with the police officer, or family members who experience those traumatic situations with the police officer, all of that gets passed down.
Because that's what we got to teach our
Yeah.
kids. Look, when you come across a police officer, this is
This
how
is
you
what you
handle
do.
this situation.
It's a life or death situation.
I think the discussion of implicit bias is a thing too, like the test for implicit biases and a level of awareness of your own self. I think in any career or occupation that you hold, you have to have a level of awareness because you need to know what your biases are. Like even as therapists, like we have to be acutely aware of the biases that we bring into the room when we're seeing a client that might not look like us, isn't from the same socioeconomic status as us. Like, what am I thinking automatically when I'm confronted with this sort of person? And I feel like the same way that we're asked to think that way, police officers need to be asked to think that way. Like when you are met with a black man at 10:30 at night who's getting food for their children and suddenly now they become a hashtag, what went wrong? Where did we go left? Where did your mind go to where this person is now a trending topic, now Black Lives Matter move, like how did we get here? It started somewhere, and I feel like in awareness, implicit bias, like those sort of tests and that sort of a training is important. I think when it comes to beginning to even operate from a social justice framework, I have to be aware of where I stand to know where I want to go. What is freedom? What is freedom for the black person?
What does freedom look like?
What does it look like to be free in 2022?
Well, for me, the fear of freedom is a silent mental bondage Black people experience based on the historical and actual context of that Black person or Black people in America. This process overall is fear. It is specifically, it limits and restricts and diminishes imagination. It discourages us in indulging in academics, restrict us in going further in academics. It creates a false narrative about our image that doesn't allow for full liberation in the mind to properly face reality. So, with liberation in the mind of Black people, we are then able to be in working relationship with reform, the abolition of systems, free to indulge in opportunities, courage to strive for the highest academic success, tolerate as a Black president of the United States, and create community where we save us from us by reclaiming our unity. So what that means to me is that we are eliminating fear to create more community, to create more Black people to have identity when showing up in spaces and institutions in which was never built for them. We need more Black people to have identity so that we can continue to create and not perpetuate the cycle.
I think I had brought this up in class, but I had got the concept and the idea from was it Casey? Last name starts with a G.
Oh, and the Nod podcast.
The Nod podcast.
Yeah.
Casey Gerald.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Casey Gerald. He basically explained what freedom would kind of look like, or liberation for us would look like, and that's basically thinking freely of ourselves, exploring who we are, exploring our self-identity, exploring our past to basically understand where we're going in the future.
What about like the mental things though? Like what are we coming up against like in terms of helping us? Like how can we move forward mentally speaking? Because I feel like that's a huge mental process before it becomes action. Like how can I decide and then do?
Yeah, because I feel like that's kind of a loaded question, because that goes with all these other facets of the systems that we have in place, from the education system, from the policing system, from medical systems, all these other systems.
Yeah.
those specific systems, and also just like our mindset. So there has to be like a lot of education in regards to what mental health is, what is a
Yes.
positive mindset of mental health is, what it means to actually like take care of yourself, self-help, like general things to help you calm down, like all those different facets. It helps with your mental health, and it helps with like the general aspect of like, okay, this is a good way of dealing with it. We have to educate our people in regards to like, this is what mental health is. It's not what we've been thinking for all these past hundreds of years, especially with like psychological theories not even being made for us. They're
Right.
made for like white cisgendered heterosexual men, and it's genuinely just like, it was not made for us. We were not meant to be in this mindset.
So would you say mental health looks different for everybody?
Yeah, like it is gonna look different for everybody. You're not one person gonna deal with something the same way the other person is.
Yeah, the journey. Quick, I think there has been a consistent like them and us thing, or like them and you. And so I think that that's sort of an outward thing where it's like the majority and the minority, or the minoritized. And so we've kind of adopted that thinking, which I think is why another reason mental health services I think are important. And the, like you're saying, I guess telling our people, or like the people, like Black people in general, like what mental health means. What does it mean to step into mental health services? I think misinformation, or the lack of, keeps us from things. And so when we then look at it as a them and us, or like them and you, I think that's also part of the problem. And we think that this doesn't apply to us. It wasn't set up for us. It's not applied for us. But when in fact, like these again are all like microcosms of a bigger issue. Like it's just so many layers to like systems. Like we think systemic in terms of government, but there are systems in our mindsets. And I think that's one of them, like not understanding that mental health isn't just a one person thing, but it is an individual thing.
Right.
And so if it's an individual thing, then I have every right as a Black woman to walk in whatever that means for me without having to deal with the different,
Criticism.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yeah, I say build because when it comes to mental health counseling therapy, like we just talked about, that's unheard of in the Black community. Like, so for us, it's understand. We got to build to understand first. It's acceptable to go to a therapist to admit that you have an issue, and then from there build and gain that trust. Because right now I feel the problem for us is Black people, we don't go to therapists. We don't do like, you know what I'm
talk
saying?
about your problems like that.
We
That's
talk
the
to our
problem.
friends, we
Talk
talk
to
to
your
our
mama.
family members.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
see, but look, that's why we resort to the bottle. That's how we
Yeah.
handle our depression or
Or-
drugs
yeah.
or whatever it is. That's how we handle our issues.
Sure.
Cause you go get drunk, you ain't think about that no more. You know, or you smoke, you don't think about that no more. So all that plays a role. But how important is education or mental health in education? Like, should we adopt a mental health framework into the educational system?
Yes, there's like there's a lot with it, because there's also like cultural competencies that come with it, and that can also be geared towards mental health as well. Because like as you know, like the way that they teach certain things like slavery and things of that nature, you don't know how that affects the Black students. You don't know how that affects any other student. So being like culturally competent and historically competent to realize and actually voice to those students that like, hey yo, this gonna be some hard stuff. So just be prepared, and if you need some to talk about it, I got you. We can go together to like a school therapist or a school counselor, things of this nature. So like kind of implementing those things, that can be really good.
To what we were saying as far as we got it. That's why I said building, because we got to educate them. You know what I'm saying? We got to teach them these things. We got to let parents see that it's okay to receive these services.
Yeah.
Because again, in our community, in our culture, your child's getting services. You talking about somebody who child getting services. You know, that means something wrong with your child. And that's a defense mechanism for a lot of people. So to say that, oh, like you say, my child don't need no therapy. I know my child needs therapy. Like, it's a lot of kids now who parents won't get them on meds or won't get them tested just because they don't want their child labeled.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
a problem
and it's,
child.
That's a stigma.
and it's
like,
not even the label coming from the school system. I don't want my child labeled for my friends and my family.
Oh, that's a fact
You
too.
get what I'm saying?
That's a fact too. Yeah, 'cause, you know, pride.
Yeah,
Lot of
so that's
pride.
why I say we have to educate them first,
Yeah.
and let them see that this is okay, you know, and then from there we offer these services more and more. But I feel it's not even needed just for students, but also for the teachers.
Absolutely.
Like when I think about mental health in the educational system, I'm thinking like, look, the teachers we going through it ourselves, let alone the
Right.
kids, and then we in here and we trying to balance life, work, and then all the emotions that come with dealing with people, So between all of that, it's like I need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
I need a break. I need an outlet.
For educators, thinking about it being drained halfway through the year, how is that affecting your performance as a teacher and then your students' performance as academically? If all of y'all are drained, not just the teacher, but all of y'all are mentally drained at that point.
And that's who suffers the most,
Yeah.
the students. Because as teachers, it's like we're drained, but in our minds, I'll do this again next year.
Yeah.
Like it's a cycle.
Right.
It's different kids, different problems, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. So I'll be able to do this again next year. Hopefully, I'll be better. But for that child, they can't get that moment back. They can't get that learning opportunity back. So they're the ones at fault. But again, what do we do as teachers? Like we're trying our best. Resources are not there.
What I'm hearing too is like then it becomes that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like you just don't know what you don't know. And I think that to your point of they spend more time at school than they do at home, like how important the education system is and how important it is in recognizing the differences between their demographic of students. Like the experience, just even in the Black community, I feel like there are nuanced experiences. I think there are people who experience what you experienced, what you just described, but then there are like people who experience it different, who like have different SES statuses and they are socioeconomic statuses and they are more affluent and have better, understanding of things and so then have better opportunity. And so I think the lack of education is what is killing part of the education system. The not understanding that like there are statistics set up against Black students when it comes to standardized testing. So then then they don't even know like the concept of the school to prison pipeline. They don't understand these things because they don't know it. How can I understand something that I'm not aware of, that I don't know? And I think that comes down to like educators being like needing to, I feel like, carry the torch in that a little bit. But then like, I don't know, I feel like it circles all the way back to the beginning of our conversation of police officers being aware. There's a level of awareness that needs to be in every sector: education, police, mental health. And I think that it starts from the individual person, but then it goes into the community because individuals are made up of community. Like communities are made up of individuals. And if those individuals come together, you call that a family. And if those families are healthy, then our communities can be healthy. But if we don't know what we don't know, how do we then begin to be healthy?
It take a tribe.
Yeah, village
And
mentality.
then so important. You talked about parents, and we talked about building these relationships with parents. I feel like that's also one of the biggest support systems for a student to succeed in school.
Yes.
Having not only a great teacher, but parents that are willing to collaborate with the teacher. Like, what does my child need? If they need anything, what's my child learning?
Right.
Or the teacher even starting that relationship with them.
Yes.
With the parents saying that, okay, this is where your child is at. They're doing exceptionally well. They're not doing exceptionally well.
Right.
This is the things that we can do to fix that, or this is the things that you can do to maintain this.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to cut you. I
Go
do
ahead.
mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But I had to get it out because one thing I practiced, and somebody taught me this when I first started teaching. You have those parents where a student, every time this parent gets a phone call about that student, it's negative.
Yeah.
So, but at some point, that student does something positive.
Yeah.
Who calls that parent when that person does?
You know,
So I tried to practice, like, especially the ones very rarely get a positive phone call.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Ma, I'm just calling to tell you he been doing good the last 3
Yeah.
days. You get what I'm saying? And those parents, but they need to hear that kind of
Sure.
stuff. So when the child goes home and the parent says, hey, your teacher called me today, told me you've been doing good, it kind of like, okay, I like how that feel. You know what I'm saying? And so it's all about how, like you say, how we treat people and everything else, but all that plays a role.
Yeah, I think it's you have to be dedicated enough to do something like that.
Yeah.
To work on the off season, if you will, where it's not just something's happening, so I'm going to call about this student, but like being willing to engage in that sort of a way. Even like you're talking about bridging the gap between the teacher and the parents.
And the community. I wanted to add that to that.
Right. Like in order to do that, though, I feel like they're like going off your idea of a mental health framework for like in the educational system, I think then it invites a conversation of what are the hindrances? Like, why are they hindered from performing well? Like, why is their academic performance low? What's
So I
going
look
in
at the
there?
camera. Which camera I look at? Camera I look at? I got some. I think I got a little answer for you.
I was like, one right
Yeah,
in
like
front of me.
what how can, like, I think it then brings up healthy questions that goes towards our like building and the restoring of the Black person. Like, it, all of it is connected in like opening up space to have conversations that we otherwise would not have had because maybe we didn't feel we had the right to or the freedom to, when in reality we have the freedom, we have the capacity. Equality is accessible to us, and equity at that. But like, if we're not, like you're saying, supporting, if not, if all systems that we've talked about are not supporting each other, we leave room for gaps. And I think those gaps, if not bridged, is what can be a hindrance to us. But yeah.
And I was just about to add, like in regards to like the whole, yeah, like your education is important. However, you as a person is the main thing. Because
Exactly.
like I know, like from a podcast that we had to listen to for class, um, I forgot his name, but he was talking about how and there's a quote that he said. He was saying that when he was in college, and a professor had was talking that like a group of like just majority black students. Um, the teacher said like if you're gonna be a token, be the best token. That didn't rub me the right way. But then he ended up saying that like we done raised too many great dead black men, but instead we need to like empower them more in regards to like empower them like actually care about like other aspects of themselves. So like that kind of just resonated with me. Like God, dog, that's
Yeah.
deep right there. I didn't think about it like
Like,
that.
you're not
So
set up for the prison system. You're not just an athlete. Your body's not just used to do work, like to make this happen. Like, you have a mind that's attached to that body that is to be liberated. And this is how we do it. I think is
What are you, as a white educator or as an educator in general, what are we doing in the classroom to understand where our students are coming
You
from?
gotta,
Yes.
you gotta ask questions.
You gotta ask questions, be willing to ask questions, and you gotta be willing to
Learn.
also educate them. Yeah, to learn and to be willing to educate them on whatever history or background that they are coming from,
that's why you
and
just
do
gotta
it from a unbiased standpoint. And how you do that is actually go on, like, we all have access to the internet, go on and fact check yourself and teach these, like, stand up in the classroom and teach these students about their situations, or teach these students about whatever subject area that trying to get them to learn about. But
getting at here is we all have a role to play, and social change is possible if we play to our strengths and play in our role, but also understand that our roles intersect, and all of these things rely on each other. Right? Intersectionality, interdisciplinary work.
This is the word for the day: intersectionality.
Right. It matters in restoring humanity to the Black person. It matters in Black liberation. Like, there is no Black liberation if it's not a team sport. There's an individual role, there's a collective role, there's a communal role, but it all starts with like me recognizing, like, actually I need to humble myself to understand you, to understand you, to understand you. And if we could begin to do that at different fronts, I think we would get into what we call progress.
oh wow,
A 30-second wrap up of what we believe Black liberation means. Given everything we've just discussed, what does Black liberation mean to you?
So Black liberation for me personally, I believe in education. I believe in our education system, improving our educational system. So I regard education as understanding the world around us through whatever mode of teaching that is already available.
So my aspect of Black liberation is in the regard of mental health and kind of going on your point of freedom, and I know why the case bird sings. Actually having like that voice to actually like express how you feel and express those feelings of like depression or anxiety or just concern even for yourself, for the people around you, and actually having a space where you can actually get that out and actually have a space where you feel safe in your uncomfort, if that makes sense. So in the times where you actually do feel uncomfortable, in the times where you are feeling stressed, in the times where you are just in a down mindset, you actually have that space, you actually have that freedom to actually say like this is the person that I am, this is the stuff that I'm experiencing, and actually having those spaces and environments to where you're comfortable actually saying all this.
Simply put, I think that Black liberation is the reality that we can live freely. And living freely, I think, is a dynamic process. I think you have to live freely mentally, like in your heart. I think you have to live freely through your actions. I think that happens as a direct result. So if we can understand um, that we have every right that we feel like has been taken away from us, dating back way back to, again, pre-colonization, colonization, like all of these things I think play a role into our concept of freedom. So if I can understand what freedom means, I can be liberated. So if I know that I am free because I've always been free, and the only reason I think that I have lost my freedom is because of oppression, if I can remove that lens, the lens that other people have seen me through, I will recognize that I'm free. That's Black liberation to me. I think that if the Black person can get to that place where we recognize that actually, like, God created me to be free, and to live a life of freedom outside of the lenses and frameworks that people would have on me, then I've achieved Black liberation.
Just giving us the same opportunity that everybody else has. And when I say opportunity, I'm not necessarily saying a handout, but like we talked about the police brutality and the stop and frisk. If I just give me the same chances that you'll give everybody else when they're pulled over, or the same consideration that you'll give someone else. If we get arrested, give us the same time as you would give a white guy
Yep.
for the same crime. You know, same priors, if any. But just be fair. And, you know, I know that's hard to say, but like Sarah said, treat us for who we are. Like, don't think about when you see a young Black man with dreads. You look at me, and I've had this from Black people. You don't look like a teacher. And I tell them all the same thing. I know that. And it's funny to me. Some people take offense to things like that. I find it funny. But I know every room that I walk in, people look at me and they're automatically thinking, okay, he has dreads, he's tall, he's Black. They probably think I got a record. But then certain rooms you walk in, it's like, but why is he here? Like, you're walking in the university. We talked earlier, you asked me, what does talking or sounding intelligent look like? Just allowing people to see that you have something under your brain or in your brain. You know, just seeing up top, like when I articulate certain things, or I can touch on a subject and you can see that he really understands what he's talking about. Like, to me, that's liberation, by just accepting us for who we are. Because I'm telling you this, and we've known this just from whenever they've allowed us a seat at the table, we always take over.
80.
We always take
80.
over. You
Paid
know,
the meal for him too.
you let us in the NBA, we
Please.
took that over. You let us in tennis, Venus them took, like, everywhere you put us in the boardroom, we taking those over. Like, imagine more Black engineers. Imagine more Black doctors, Black scientists, and not even Black electricians. Podcasts,
Counselors, therapists.
Kids need to know that this is possible, having a podcast studio, because it's the new rate of the world. Everybody's doing a podcast now. By you allowing kids to see that. But that's, to me, again, that's Black liberation, opportunity, allowing us that exposure and to see everything. And if you put us on a level playing field, even if they have a few steps ahead of us, I'm telling you, we coming for them, because that's just always been us. We always had to overcome adversity. I know that's not 30 seconds, but
And if they don't allow us, we're taking it. That's all we have for today.
Hey, you welcome.
Black culture.
Black culture.
That's the end of our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Until
you.
next time.
Thank you.
Sunny D signing off.
The fear of freedom is the silent mental bondage Black people experience based on the historical and actual context of the Black person in America. This process limits, restricts, and diminishes imagination, discourages us in indulging in academics, creates false narratives around our image that doesn't allow for full liberation in the mind to properly face reality. With liberation in the mind of Black people, we are then able to be in working relationship with reform, the abolition of systems, free to indulge in opportunities, courage to strive for the highest academic success, tolerate as a Black president of the United States, and create community where we save us from us by reclaiming our humanity. Just as slavery was abolished, our minds was not allowed to follow. We're stuck believing the lie that's trapped in the facet of all of our reality. A marriage of fear of freedom and the progression of abolition creates Black liberation for all people, because who are we when the system is abolished? Abolition alone is not liberation. The fate of our freedom cannot be left for this capitalist society to create. We can't be stuck tormented by our existence outside of the law. We must see a world where freedom is only determined by both black liberation and abolition simultaneously.